Tonight, not guilty. Now, how did that happen? For the first time, you will find out. You will hear from the foreperson. Casey Anthony, juror number 11, goes on the record. As foreperson, he had the job to run the jury deliberations and then sign the verdict form. The form that read not guilty to the murder of little Kaylee. Now, we know a lot of you are stunned and many outraged by the verdict. You want to know how and why 12 citizens said not guilty. And tonight, and only right here, you get that inside information. Here's the foreperson. Nice to have you join us.
Thank you, Greta. It's an honor to be here.
You are number 11, right?
Number 11.
And the foreperson?
I was the foreperson.
You've asked us not to use your name.
Yes, I would really greatly appreciate that.
So you get to the first day of the trial and opening statements. After you heard the opening statement of the prosecution, before the defense opening statement, what do you think?
I'll tell you what, it really threw me for, it was shocking. It was very shocking because, again, I really didn't follow much of the case after the first couple of weeks. And with what the state was presenting, I thought that was pretty standard. You know, in the opening remarks, they did show some pictures that were, you know, that will stay with you for life. And we realized just how intense and how serious this case is. When the defense got up, then that's when they started throwing out things that we did not know, and that's where it really kind of hit us. It was something that we had to kind of sit back and let soak in, and just see where he went with from there. So it was shocking. It was very eye-opening. You know, it's a situation. That's a time I'll never forget.
You know, the people who watch on television or even in the courtroom, we can divert our eyes from the picture to the remains or whatever it is. I mean, the really horrible. You're the fact finder. You can't. So you all had to actually look at the worst pictures.
Yeah, we did. We had to look at it. It was right there in front of us, and we had to, you know, make sure that we take the notes that we needed to take on those pictures, and it was tough. You know, I told the judge this: I've never once made a decision in my life where I wanted to get in a profession where I'd have to see those types of things, and we were forced to, and it was tough.
In terms of the picture of the remains, I mean, one of the issues was the duct tape.
Right.
Did you actually see a picture of the remains on the ground and the placement of the duct tape? I mean, is that something that you saw?
We did. Yeah, we saw that numerous times. That was shown to us. The duct tape, the skull. That was something that was a major focus at times, and we were able to see, all of that.
Was the duct tape on the skull, or was it adjacent to the skull?
It was, as far as on the skull, there was one area where it was connected, and that dealt with more of the hair. It was not on actually a part of the bone, but it was right there in the vicinity of the nasal cavity and where the mouth would be.
So one interpretation would be that the duct tape was over the mouth and the nose, from what you looked. I mean, that is one interpretation.
That's one interpretation, yes.
How was that explained to you in terms of, I mean, some people have thought, that the prosecution obviously thought that showed an effort to suffocate.
Right, right. Well, and that's what the prosecution was explaining to us, that was the purpose of the duct tape was for suffocation. And they explained to us, where the vicinity of where that duct tape was, the age of the duct tape. The one thing that I never really bought was the duct tape was placed at a later time, because you could look at that duct tape and you could tell that it's been aged. But as far as where the duct tape was at the initial point and to where the duct tape was when the body was found, that was argued, and that's where a lot of the discrepancy was. It was attached to a part of the hair, which makes you think that it was placed on there, but that was the only placed on there before the body was placed where it was. Because I don't like using the word dumped. But it was something that, we had to really take a long, hard look at, because it was there for some time, and we needed to, where it was actually from the get-go, we don't know.
When you say the hair, when I hear that description, I think a piece of duct tape up here on the head is hair. Right. Down here, I realize it's a smaller, remains so small, is down here. Was it more on the hair region or more on the nose and mouth region of what the best you could see when they found the skull?
When they found the skull, there was the longer part of the hair that came down towards the ear. Now, the hair formed what's called a hair mat, and that's where the hair then, as the decay was taking place, the hair then fell to form sort of a like a horseshoe ring around the head. So
you mean like looped around the head?
Well, looped a little bit around and underneath it, but more back around the base of the skull and up toward the sides of the jaw.
Right.
So sort of like this horseshoe type of look to it. The duct tape was where and what part of the head and what part of the hair that it was attached to would have been very difficult to see, just because of all of the hair being there on the ground. There was only a few strands of hair that really covered the skull, not to go in depth into what the visual of the skull was. So I couldn't exactly tell you where that tape was in vicinity of hair when the hair was actually to the skull.
Well, so was the duct tape on the hair, and if the hair moved, the duct tape moved?
Could have.
So it wasn't like, I realized it was on, the thinking by the prosecution is it was on the flesh, and when the flesh recedes and decomposes, then that moves the tape.
Yeah, the tape was the tape was more attached to the side. As it got up towards the mouth, it became more detached, and that's where, a lot of the discrepancy could have been. But, it was a situation really where, with decomp and with time spent, with time gone by, we knew the vicinity of where that tape was, but we just didn't know, exactly where. But it was, we knew the vicinity of where that tape was in relation to the skull.
Were you convinced where that tape came from? I mean, the source
Yes.
of the tape. Where did the tape come from?
The tape came from wherever they store the tape at the Anthony house.
So it was Anthony tape. You don't have any doubt about that?
No, it was a very distinctive type of tape. The tape was shown numerous times. The same type of tape, which was made in Avon, Ohio, which had its mark on it. It was not your standard silver duct tape that did not have any markings on this. This did have a mark on it, and it was on throughout the tape consistently. Every couple of inches there was that mark. I've never seen that tape before, and I've bought duct tape numerous times. I know that same tape was spotted in a video at one of the centers that they opened up for the missing Kaylee. It was noted to be on numerous signs to be posted that had pictures of Kaylee, and it was also placed on the gas can, which was something that was attributed to the house there.
It's amazing how you become an expert in things like, even now you're an expert in tape. I mean, because you have to hear it day in and day out, things that you never ordinarily in your career might become so familiar with. Right,
exactly. You never know. I mean, those things, some things that we would never want to learn, we had to learn. Some things we knew a little bit about, that was only refined.
How do you, or what did you believe to be or conclude was how the remains or the body got from wherever the child died to where the remains are found, a couple blocks away?
Well, I mean, we know that it was, obviously the body was, it was dumped there. It was left there. As far as, there's a lot of gray area, that goes from on that June 15th when the body was discovered. And there's a lot of that, is just a lot of speculation as to how it got there, who took it there, and just a lot of unanswered questions in that regard. So I can't really comment on that. I don't know how it got there, how Kaylee got there. I can't tell you how or who, but ultimately the body ended up there.
Were you ever convinced how she died?
No, never.
What's your most likely, which is apart from beyond reasonable doubt, is a very different standard than what's most likely or what you think or what you guess or anything. Where do you fall in the spectrum?
Well, as far as, again, this is all speculation. There's a number of ways that Kaylee could have died. There is the possibility, there was the evidence of chloroform, which we can touch on later. There was a pool right there, just a feet away, a couple feet away from the doors that has had pictures of her being able to open ladders that she potentially could have really have climbed up herself. And I know that is a major way that a lot of children die down here in Florida, but we don't know if that's the cause or if that was the cause of death. We don't know the cause of death, and that was one of the major issues that we had and one of the major issues that we had addressed. We don't know the cause of death. Everything was speculation.
You mentioned the chloroform. How did that figure into this and into your thinking?
Well, the chloroform, it really, as far as the development of the chloroform, the internet search on the chloroform, you know, really, there was the MySpace or Facebook posting of the winter over with chloroform picture, and then there was the actual Google search the next day that was done from the computer, not the laptop, but from the actual desktop computer in the Anthony home. You can speculate, you know, hey, here it is. The boyfriend posts this, win her over with chloroform. The next day I want to know what chloroform is. You can speculate into that. There was no documentation on buying anything to make chloroform. The one internet search that she made from Google was a 3-minute internet search, and then it subsided from there. And, you know, if there was possible more traces of it in greater amounts, more of a way of how it can be concocted, how it could be purchased, whatever it may be, none of that was ever there. So we were very limited in what we had when it came to chloroform. We were told, and they did, you know, as far as what chloroform is detected in other products at the levels, you know, chloroform is detectable in other products as well. But there just was not enough. There really was not enough for us to bring chloroform into the mix. We know there were smaller levels of it in the trunk. We know there was a Google search on it, and that's what we had. It wasn't detected anywhere else. It was not on the steering wheel. It wasn't on the handle of the door going into the car. And even if there was, there still is a question of who and where.
Did you think that Cindy Anthony was telling the truth when she said that she had done the searches for chloroform?
Well, there's a lot of speculation into that. There's a lot that went into her and looking for the chlorophyll because she was worried about her dogs. You know, I don't know. With Cindy, it wasn't as obvious to me, the line. I mean, she was in a lot of pain. She was in a lot of stress. You know, allegedly she was on a lot of medication, and she's been questioned a number of different times. But, you know, as far as her going back and forth with that, you know, that was something that you always kind of kept in the back of your mind. You know, as far as her lying about it, well, there's, you know, people that may look into that and people, but that was not something that we really considered much when we were going into deliberation. When
Cindy testified, she said something to the effect, and I don't know the exact words, but that the car smelled of death or something. I guess that the prosecution theory is that the child decomposed in that car in part. Did you credit what she said? Did you believe that the child decomposed in the trunk?
Well, you know, there was the smell of decomposition that some police officers said they noticed and others did not. Here's the problem that I have with the decomposition, and this may lead in some other questions that you may have for me. The day that everything went down in July, the car was there. People were not going in and out of the front door. They were going in and out of the garage door, and the car was right there. And there was nobody that detected the sign of decomp in that regard. If it was something that was that pungent, something that was that obvious, with the law officers that were going in and back, in and forth, you know, in and out of the garage at that state, the father said that he smelled it earlier, but didn't bring it up at that point. The smell of the decomp was argued, and some people smelled it, some people did not smell it. So as far as whether or not the body did actually decomp in that trunk,